I'm compelled to cry out because of the intent of the president as contained in his tribute dated October 14, 2019, in honor of my 65th birthday. He wrote, and I quote, "We have shared ideas on how to engender a better country and formed a tag team for political power. May the ideas germinate fully, proliferate, and give us the country of our dreams. I am compelled to speak out at this point because, given the state of the nation, the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari is in grave danger of being confined to an unsavory side of history. I'm indeed compelled to speak out because Nigeria is in a state of emergency."
Well, good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, it's a beautiful
Easter Monday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're coming to you live from Lagos. I'm Kayode Kikiru. Thank you for joining us. Well, it might be a holiday for a majority of Nigerians, but you know, the issues we face in the country.
Another holiday.
Oh, they never go on holidays. I mean, you could talk about the economy. Yes, Nigeria has a fairly large economy by the GDP size. I think top 30 in the world. But I mean, when you look at the indicators from inflation to unemployment and the rest, you know that a lot of work needs to be done. And we can talk about security. I mean, security doesn't really go on break, really. Every day you find some insecurity report from state to state. I mean, the vice president had to visit Ebonyi State just to commiserate with the state government right after that attack that killed several people. Now, you have Pastor Tunde Bakare speaking about an issue that it would seem he has, tried to be careful in handling it because, like he said, he's been with the president sharing ideas on how to come up with a nation or a country of our dreams. That's what he said. And that's where I want to start from this morning. What is a country of our dreams, really? I think there needs to be some form of harmonization. Let us know what you think a Nigeria of your dreams should look like. So we know if we're on the same page, really, because it would seem that dream or those dreams vary from maybe people to people or from ethnicity to ethnicity, maybe from political party to political party. What is the dream? What is the dream of you as a Nigerian? What do you want Nigeria to be? So I think it's a good starting point because until we harmonize that, then we might be working at cross purposes because for some person, a Nigerian dream or the Nigeria of his dreams or her dreams might be a Nigeria that it's just me, me, me. I shall be, the one that all the benefits accrue to. And for some other people, it's a Nigeria that ensures equity, fairness, and justice. So we should first understand what is the Nigeria of our dreams, but there's no gainsaying that the Nigeria of our dreams should be a Nigeria that is fair, equitable, just. A Nigeria that, we can all say we own as a people, not as a certain people or as a certain group. Now, that's on the one hand, but the part where he talks about the legacy of the president. Don't forget, this is a man that you can say has been very close to the president. We remember that he was meant to be the president. He was the president's running mate. Of course, he didn't win that election. And barring that loss, he would have been the vice president at that point. So this is a man that moved across the country with the president, probably had meetings into the night every time, talking about how to make the country better. And for him to come out now saying that, well, your legacy is at stake. And he says you need to say something. I think it speaks volumes.
I saw a snippet of an interview with Christian Amanpour over the weekend. The president was speaking. And the president, in that interview, I don't remember when that interview was held, was saying that he noticed when he got into office, monies voted to combat insecurity went into private pockets. And if I am to quote him correctly or even paraphrase some of the things that he said correctly, some people sat down like they wanted to have lunch or dinner and cannibalized the money and put it into their private pockets. And it was quite revealing. The question that came to my mind at that time was, so what did you do about it? One of the mantras upon which the government of President Muhammadu Buhari came into power was that of an incorruptible government. But then what I have found is that when we talk about government, most of the time, we personalize it to an individual. And it's happened successively over the years. And what you would notice from the Shagari government of the Second Republic, I seem to go back there, up until the Buhari government that took over from him, to the Babangida government, to the Abacha government, to the Abdul Salam government, to the Obasanjo government, to the Yaradua government. Well, the Yaradua government cannot make things better a little. And then to the Jonathan government, it would seem like successively things just got worse. What then is the problem? I think it goes back to the issue that Pastor Bakari mentioned, that of legacy. And what's that common dream? You talked about that dream. In a previous interview we had, I think, with Emeritus Professor Oyebode, was saying, look, we need a national ethos. Until we have a national ethos, we really don't have a vision. There is nothing that binds us together towards which we can all dream. Question then is, how do we birth this national ethos? Because until we get to that point, we're literally, winking in the dark. We have about more than 20 banks in the country. Every single one of them is doing the same thing, but there is usually a direction that each bank is going. This organization has its own vision. Every telco has its own vision. So we need we are a nation among many others, more than 50 in Africa. What makes us unique? What is our unique value proposition? What is our national ethos? What's our dream as a nation? Because until we have that dream, that every ministry, department, and agency is compelled to work towards, we just seem to be we're around in circles.
I'm not sure it's a coincidence, really, that you mentioned the banking sector. Because it's a peculiar industry. I mean, they deal with finance. And if there's anything, you see banks always coming together. I mean, recently they had an issue with telcos.
With one of the
particular
telcos,
telco.
yeah.
And you saw the way they rallied together. And I think it's probably because they have a level playing field. There's a common goal, really. And I don't want to say it's because of money, but hey, I mean, the resources really matter.
Ultimately, it is. But you see, at the end of the day, they are selling services to people. But each one of them is unique on its own. Each bank is unique on its own, just as every company is unique. No matter what industry you're playing in, everything is unique. These banks that you mentioned, each one of them has a security unit. They have a communications unit. They have an administration unit. They have an HR unit. All of them working towards the vision, the national, the corporate ethos, the corporate vision of that organization. So the same thing should it be for us as a nation.
And I think, I mean, speaking to the president, for example, for Pastor Bakari and a lot of other people, and some would say, as you've said, that sometimes people personalize it, but you don't understand why. I mean, the president sets the tone, as it were.
I do.
I mean, remember that talk about body language. I mean, they talk about the president's body language. In fact, it's beyond even body language. Right? It's what the president says. He makes a statement and people run with it. So that's why from time to time, people speak to the president.
I completely agree with you, Kade. But the question that you want to ask is, how much information do people allow to get to the president? That's why people talk about strong systems.
But remember that Mr. Garbashew said the president is voracious when it comes about media. That in fact, if you want to get to the president, speak to the media. So can we still say the president is being shielded?
I can't answer for him, but I can say one thing. Mr. Garbashew is a spokesman. He speaks. Does he do anything for the president? So those are the issues. But then what Pastor Bakari has raised is definitely something that I think the president should personally take very seriously. I know that he has a direct, line of contact with the president, and he speaks to him. I'm pretty sure they share ideas from time to time. But that issue of legacy, let it not be after the president has left office that we'll say, okay, this is what he did. Let's see what he's doing now.
But we would say this is what he did.
Oh, most certainly. That goes without saying. Well, take a look at the papers this morning. And, of course, we want to begin with one of the leads. And let's look at the Vanguard newspaper. And hope that I'll be able to look at the Mr. and Mrs. segment this morning. Interestingly, that thing you see in the in the graphics is one of the things on my mind as we were chatting. I was hoping I wouldn't have to talk about it because we still have it on the agenda today. But State of the Nation, just as we chatted, it's on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper as well. Nigeria in emergency, drifting apart irretrievably, attributed to Kuka and Bakare. And what's the response? Kuka playing politics, ascribed to the presidency. Find that on page 27.
Well, no response for Pastor Bakare.
Well,
more details, right?
Well, more details on the inside pages, but I'm pretty sure maybe no response. But you never can tell what you will have on the inside pages. In that chart you see there, AFCFTA concerned over dumping mounts as trade deficit widens. You know, this was always a concern anyway. Analysts list pain points and solutions. We're taking steps to counter the situation that's ascribed to the federal government. And over the weekend, we received news of a list of civil society leaders who have passed on. And this one, right beside the chart you see there, Buhari, Fayemi, Agbakoba, others mourn. A civil society leader, Innocent Chukuma, dies at 55. Right above the nameplate, more tributes pouring as OAU, Falana, Igeni, others mourn Odumake. All these on the front page. Well, not letting down is the issue of security. As we referenced earlier, 67 security agents killed in Southeast and South-South in 3 months. 25 police stations burnt during the same period. State governments, please vow to fish out culprits. Story is on page 5. I don't even want to say any more about that one. Okay, let's see if Mr. and Mrs. is cool this morning. Mrs. says, if men emulate Jesus Christ, the world will be a better place. And Mr. responds, if women emulate Mary, his mother, the world will be better than better.
Oh, I don't think there's an end in sight. Well, take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. The lead story, OBJ Gumi Meet list over 20 solutions to insecurity. One special court to deal promptly with cases of banditry, kidnapping, and unlawful carrying of weapons. FG must be proactive, secure necessary and updated intelligence to deal with organized crimes. FG states LGs must work together to put 14 million out-of-school children back in schools. So those are some of the solutions put forward. So 20 of them, and some might say you add that to other solutions that have been put forward. How many of them will be taken on board? How many of them have been taken on board? Well, page 26 has at least more details concerning that story. And you see that one from Bakare, Nigeria in a state of emergency. Its survival hanging. Buhari overestimates his mandate, ignores opposition, pursues goals that prove to be beyond reach. There's some of the quotes from his statement. It's on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune. And, you know, it was a sad weekend. It still is, really. Very shaken by the news, first of Mr. Odumake's death and then Mr. Innocent Chukwuma's death. And you see, the activists we lost in Odumake, Falano, Akintoye, Olawepo Hashim, we had premonition of his death. That's coming from his brother. I mean, we've hosted them, these two individuals, time and again on our program. And, I mean, brilliant men, and they left their marks indelibly. We'll be forever grateful, really, to them. Well, there's some other stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, but I'll let you do the choosing this morning. That's it for the Nigerian Tribune.
The Guardian newspaper leads also with Bakare Kuka hit FG with damning reports on the nation. That's the lead of the Guardian newspaper this morning with 3 riders. Bakare, Buhari bogged down with second-term curse, abandoned blueprint. Wow. Kuka, Nigeria now massive killing field as government rewards criminals. And the Vice President responds, don't lose hope, all will be well. And presidency's response, Kuka's bashing is ungodly. Well, the details are on the front page, continues on page 2 this morning. And right under that story, fears of a surge in casualties as doctors' strike enters 5th day. Patients lament epileptic healthcare services. NORD won't call off strike until demands are met. NMA can only intercede when government pays arrears. Uh-oh. Well, that detail you see on the front page continues on page 2 of the paper this morning. And there's so many other issues on the front page that you may want to pick from. It's the Guardian this morning.
We'll take a look at Nigerian News Direct. Leads with insecurity. Establish special courts for banditry. Obasanjo Sheikh Gumi urged FG. That's on page 14. And, a lot of responses to that asking just how many of them, at least how many of the kingpins have been arrested? How many of them have gone through prosecution? So will this be a solution? What happens to the arrests, the shooter on-site order, and the rest? It's a lot, really. Will be an interesting read, definitely. And you see, FG activates 200 billion Naira AFDB facility for technology creative sectors. So if you're in that, or at least those sectors, talking about technology and the creative sectors, then this might be something you should look into. 200 billion Naira AFDB facility. Well, Nigerian News Direct says it's been activated, or it is being activated. Well, more context on page 3. That should pique your attention, right? I mean, I believe so. And herdsmen enact law now. Lawmakers tells state governments. I wonder what law that is. Page 29 should give you more details. And this interesting one, you see, immigration to issue passports in 774 local government areas. Aragbeshala. It's on page 2.
Immigration.
Okay. Oh, yes. So I think this should make life easier.
Agreed, but do they have so many staff all over the nation? Just thinking.
Well, he said it, and we believe he won't just make that statement out of the blue. So, well, we'll follow up definitely to see how this one is implemented. And just one more. I'll soon expose those politicized security issues in Oyo. That's coming from Governor Makinde. So those promises have been made. I think Governor Matawale also said, well, those people would be exposed. In fact, the president made that statement also. And now the governor of Oyo State, as well as other people who have said these people will be exposed. So when will this expose,
For me, it just sounds like the security issue is not as mysterious as it looks. Question
Let's
is,
demystify it then.
Yeah. All right. Daily Trust newspaper is leading with something not very, very pleasant this morning, I tell you. IPOB kills 13 traders in Enugu, Imo in 1 week. And you're wondering what this is all about. Osinbajo in Ebonyi calls against reprisal. ACF to police. Stop killings of northerners now. Government disturbed. That's according to Uzadim. We're in search of killers, ascribed to the CP. That story is right there on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And one is wondering, okay, now that we know that that's the issue, what do we do about it? IPOB killing 13 traders in 1 week?
Oh dear. Well, next up is Blueprint, which leads with 39 students languishing in captivity. It's been weeks now, weeks upon weeks. So you see, El Rufai threatens arrest, prosecution of negotiators. He was speaking on Sunday Politics yesterday with Sheon Kimbaloye. And you see, Riders opens platform for reporting culprits. Obasanjo Gumi meet in Ajaokuta. By the way, some of the resolutions, or at least the statements that came out of that meeting, kind of speaks about the carrot approach. Where you see the governor of Kaduna State saying, well, there will be an arresting of those who, negotiate with bandits. So you wonder, what's the way forward? Yeah? You see, Nigeria massive killing field in a state of emergency. Kuka Bakare. Kuka's comment ungodly. It's coming from the presidency. That's ironic because They know him as a man of God, right?
Take a look at the Daily Times newspaper this morning, and it's business. External reserves drop to $34.82 billion amid sluggish economic recovery. Again, don't forget, we have X billion-dollar debt. Now we have $34.82 billion in reserve. What's all of that about, really? Insecurity, Obasanjo, Sheikh Gumi, others in Ogun. And all of that you find on the front page of the Daily Daily Times newspaper today.
Speaking of dailies, Daily Independent is next. Leads with Naira depreciation swells cost of servicing external debt. That's probably riding on the back of that question or the statement you made. So this is a huge one, really, because clearly you have to get more Naira to pay $1 because of the depreciation. So, and you see, NCA audit exposes Asman Air risky operations. So that one is still on. When it comes to air travel, it's a big deal. Airline lacks safety management department. Chief pilot incompetent, has only one staff in quality management department. Others owes 1.5 billion naira CSE as of December 2020. I mean, that's quite huge. So what happens with that one? Well, we don't know. And you see, cholera outbreak kills 24 in Bayelsa. So yes, we might be battling COVID and all of that, but you see, there's a very present danger with cholera right there.
And it would seem like none of these things are just going to go away anytime soon. Well, those are the papers this morning, but very quickly before we take a break, to let you know, we have news that there has been an attack in Imo State, beg your pardon. Gunmen attacked the Imo State Correctional Service and Imo State Police Command headquarters in the early hours of today, and they freed prisoners and set the place ablaze. Just over the weekend, one of the guests on one of our programs was talking about the fact that virtually every week a police station has been attacked in this country since EndSARS. And this news coming out now telling us that there has been an attack on the Imo State Police Command headquarters in the early hours of today, and they have freed some prisoners and set the whole place ablaze. The question you want to ask then is, what are we doing about this? Of course, definitely we'll bring you more information about this very, very quickly. Just to remind you, gunmen attacked the Imo State Correctional Service and Imo State Police Command headquarters in the early hours today, and they have freed prisoners and set the place ablaze. More news on that as we get more information in the course of the day. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. We're going straight into the conversation about what you have seen in the welcoming slide. But just to let you know that this that you see is as a result of the attack of gunmen on the Imo State Correctional Service and Imo State Police Command headquarters in the early hours of today. The prisoners were set free, and of course, as you can see, the place has been set ablaze. Definitely a lot of questions are being asked right now as to where were the policemen at the headquarters, where were the correctional personnel at the time that this happened. It was in the early hours of the day, not right in the middle of the night, at least from the report that is available to us. Most certainly we'll keep you informed about this as events unfold in the course of today. Well, right now, let's plunge into Nigeria's economic growth. Of course, you know that last year we were informed that Nigeria went into recession, and we have since escaped the recession. How significant is that to the Africa continent or free trade area, which took off at the beginning of this year. Professor Banji Oyelaran joins us this morning from our studios in Abuja. He is Special Advisor to the President of the AFDB on Industrialization. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Prof. Well, economy is always something that we can only hope that will help to take out the challenges that we are confronted with. My colleague this morning in our opening chart, referenced some figures that are not pleasant, and I'm sure they are concerning for you. The unemployment figures, the poverty figures, the hunger figures, and so many, all kinds of figures, and not just at the federal level, but at the states level as well. And those things are there on the one hand. On the other hand, are policies, programs, and efforts of government to tackle these things. If you would take a panoramic view of the challenges of the economy, before we go into the AFCFTA conversation, what would it be for you? What would be the main challenge we have for you? Why these figures seem to be undulating more in the negative than in the positive?
Thank you so much, Ayo. Let me take a historical view. We've 50 years of development experience now in our country. We have done the same thing for 5 decades, and it's not working. In other words, we've been dependent on oil as the main source of foreign exchange earning. As you can see, for example, the foreign reserve is always an indicator of the health of the country's trade. This is what we have done. But there are critical issues with that kind of dependency. One is that a mineral or oil-dependent economy is always an antithesis to structural change. And I'm mentioning structural change because all economies need to begin to shift away from what you might describe as low-level equilibrium economy to a higher equilibrium economy. And that's why you find those figures that you are reeling out. When an economy for too long depends on subsistence agriculture, the productivity is extremely very low. You are not
But I'm pretty sure that we'll get Professor Oyelaran Oyinka back in no time to be able to look at those, not just look at the figures, but deal with the issues and have proper conversation. Because, one of the things that you hear a number of people say is that the opportunities in the country, the business opportunities in Nigeria, to use the words of Professor Adie of NAFDAC, the negatives far outweigh, the positives far outweigh the negatives. Otherwise, why are so many foreigners pouring into the country when things don't seem to be going, well?
Well, in terms of potential, I mean, let's be honest. Nigeria's economy has it. It has it. I mean, so much potential. And I think for a lot of people, they probably see 5, 10 years from now, if things are done right. So it's important to actually invest early. I mean, when the indices are still favorable, when the foreign exchange is in favor of those coming from outside. I mean, you saw the headline saying that the depreciation makes it more expensive now to service our loans. So basically, for a lot of people, I saw another report saying that it's now cheaper for a lot of people outside the country to buy property right here in the country because of the value of the naira. So it's understandable, that is the thinking. But, he was speaking about the historical perspective, and thankfully we have Prof back. So, Prof, if you could just pick up from where you left, from where the network failed, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Because what you hear these days is about building back, building stronger. And when the idea of building means there's structural issues that we have to deal with. So this is my takeoff point from where you ended your question the other time. The structure of the economy has to be rebuilt. And I mentioned two critical foundations. One is the dependence on oil. We need to pivot away from that. And I'm sure people have said it many times, but you can't stop talking about it. Why? Because an oil-dependent economy doesn't create jobs. It's an enclave. It's localized within certain area, and it doesn't create as much jobs as, say, for example, manufacturing or industry. Number two is that an oil-dependent economy also fosters certain kinds of institutions around which there are greed and grievances. When you have an economy that is easily controlled by a very small group of people, you end up with what you might call an extractive dependent economy. So this is really, for me, the foundation that we need to rebuild. We need to pivot away from an oil-dependent economy that is not working. In 2019, all Nigeria got from oil was maybe about $40 billion. South Korea, monthly export is over $50 billion because it went from being a rural agric economy into a manufacturing economy. We need to continually say this, that no country ever since the Industrial Revolution got rich without industrializing its economy. So, and the second dimension of dependency is also the subsistence agriculture. Colonial masters encourage us to keep on exporting, commodities, cocoa and all that, which is fine. But in doing that, we also ignored what we should be eating, the basic grains, rice, cassava, and all that. So we have a double dependency on our hand, in which, for example, when the oil prices crashed, we didn't have money to import anything, including drugs. But at the same time, we needed to eat, and we couldn't eat. So the local economy, domestic economy for food also was not there because we depended on others to feed us. So I think this twin issue has to be emphasized, and we need to really take a hard look at ourselves. And this is why the African Development Bank is conducting this new round of appraisal. I'm sure you've seen in the news. Colleagues have gone around over the last 2 weeks confirming the locations. It is real now. It's not about talk. The bank is working very closely with federal government, finance, agri, water resources to build special agro-industrial processing zones across the country. And we are hoping and praying that, this is going to begin to happen this year.
Well, Prof, the issue...
What we are doing is to rebuild.
Yes. The issue, if you ask me, is not whether or not, Nigeria has the potential, as Kayode said earlier, as far as investment, even the agriculture that you're talking about, that potential is there. That is not the issue. Because, and then since you have gone historical, perhaps you may also want to take us back to the present gradually. Historically, agriculture was a mainstay for the different regions of this country. Over the years, a number of people will talk about military interregnum, which informed, the gradual depletion of our concentration on our agriculture. But I also remember that from the late 70s, there were efforts, even by the military government under Obasanjo at the time, to return Nigeria to the glory days of agriculture with the Operation Feed the Nation, which became which transmuted into Green Revolution in the Second Republic. And over the years, successive governments made little efforts to draw our attention back to agriculture. All those were policies. And even now, we have policies tapering towards returning Nigeria into agriculture and helping us focus away from that mineral dependence, oil dependence that you talked about. What then is the problem? If the policies are there and implementation one way or another is going on, and of course, organizations like AFDB are making efforts along the same line, what then is the issue? Why is it so slow, so to speak?
So, look, talk is not strategy. People talk. Every day in our country, you see someone comes out, they say something, but after a month or two, you hear nothing. When you speak, you have to back it up with action. And that's what you are referring to. They have been policies. The policies actually meant well. I believe the OBG revolution actually meant well. He was very serious. But you have to carry it through. This is really, you know, when I qualify my word with, we are hoping and we are praying, you know, that we carry it through. There is an affliction, if I may put it that way, in our country where we start things and we never finish it. So this is really the problem. It's nothing to do, right from the 70s, the national development plans were beautiful. They are comparable to anyone you see anywhere in the world. But you have to carry it through and do it. And this speaks to the power of our bureaucracy and our politics also. So looking for where did it go wrong? We have to look at the influences of the bureaucracy, the influences of the politics. I have been part of many programs in this country. I can give you examples upon examples. I was part of those who started Ajaokuta in 1979. We got somewhere, and then politics interjected. Of course, we had in 1982 austerity measures that intervened because, again, of oil crash. And these are the lessons we should go back and learn. And this is the lesson we are actually learning from now and saying, look, we should never make these mistakes again. But to be honest with you, at the back of everything, at the back of all the failures, for me, politics had always been the major issue for economic development. Politicians, bureaucrats. And we have to say it to ourselves. And I'm not afraid to say it to anyone. You know, it has always been. We are brilliant people, we have opportunities. Nobody is potential, as Dr. Additional is always saying. The potentials are there. But we have left the structure of our economy so vulnerable that every time there is some external shock, we are back to square one. And the kind of shock you find with this COVID, for example, is even far more difficult to deal with. Because what happens, anytime there's a shock like this, you set the economy back 5, 7, 10 years. For example, we are exiting recession, but what does that mean, actually? Growing at 1%?
Yeah, but before we go there...
population growth is growing at 2-point-something%. So this is the issue. We have to complete what we start.
Yeah, before we go, you know, to, you know, those economic language, so to speak, when you say structural issues, and you've repeated it over time, exactly what are you talking about? What are these structural issues that we have?
Number one is that Nigeria started at independence as a subsistence agricultural economy. You expect that after 15, 20 years, we will have transited from that phase and begin to move to a situation where we have a more dynamic industrial economy, including industrial agriculture, as I've been saying many times. We have to transit from there, and that's what every economy did. Let me give a concrete example. So you grow cotton, for example. You grow cotton. From cotton, you make textiles. And we saw Aswani, we saw all those big industries. There was a particular Nigerian company that was employing almost 1 million Arewa textile in those days. Where are they today? Gone. Gone. So that's what I mean by structural issues. So you have to move gradually from one level of technological and industrial capabilities of certain skills level to another. Those who, for example, developed the vaccine today, they didn't wake up one day. The development of a vaccine in 1 year is akin to a miracle, actually. takes 3, 4, 5 years. But because they have accumulated certain levels of technological capabilities, they have retained people with knowledge, with experience, who are able to be deployed in a minute to do those things. They're able to do it. Where are they in our country? Gone. Everybody's gone. All the good people, I mean, we're all here, some of us are here, but you look at the science labs, you look at universities, you look at everywhere. Where I was at OAU, they were doing great things everywhere. So structure, that's what I mean by structure. So you move from subsistence agriculture into industrial and into services. What has happened in our country? Let me finish the idea of structure. So what has happened now is that we totally jumped the industrial phase. And I can give you figures and I can give you graphs to show it. We moved, because telecom came, thankfully, I mean, it's a very big area. Services, for example, financial services, telecom, like you are doing, there is a big part of the economy. But the transition from agriculture must go through agriculture, must go to industrial and to services. What has happened in Africa, as with Nigeria, is that we simply jumped that industrial phase. So a lot of people talk about leapfrogging. I don't really identify with that phrase. You can't jump it. You can't build a house without a foundation. You know, services, agriculture, and they are closely connected. So therefore, we don't make anything ourselves. We don't produce. This is the crux of the matter. We don't produce. Our garments, textile, all gone. Leather, we ship off them to somewhere else and they call it Moroccan leather or something. Wow. You know, we still import starch where OBJ started the cassava revolution. By now, Nigeria should be making industrial on a large scale. So structurally, and that's what I mean by the structure of an economy, in sectoral terms, there are 3 critical sectors: agriculture, industry, and services. Nations, great nations, transited from agriculture into industry, into services. It doesn't mean that they ignored agriculture. It does mean that they actually industrialized their agriculture. They moved from hoe and cutlasses to combine harvesters, to tractors, to all of that, such that you find the manufacturing contribution to agriculture simply just labor contribution to agriculture just nosedived,
right,
and the surplus labor moved to industry, or what you call industry as a category.
I think it's quite interesting.
By the structure of the economy, yes.
Well, I like the picture you're painting, really. I mean, when you talk about agriculture, industry, and services, and agriculture and industry, they're meant to be some sort of foundation. So as it stands now, yes, we might be doing well in that services area, at least in the context of Africa, but you say that the foundation, agriculture and industry, is still quite shaky. And that takes me to my next question, because when you talked about Ajaokuta, I mean, it raised eyebrows, because that has been one major challenge. An industry, or at least a company that we thought would mean well for Nigeria, would boost Nigeria's chances. And when you look at the challenges that manufacturers have, a couple of them really, and you see that one of them is unavailability of raw materials locally and the need for development of machine industry, iron and steel. So Ajaokuta falls in that category. And I want to try and see if we can match what government is doing with, that faulty foundation to be sure they're at least going in the right direction or not. So recently, there's been a lot of chatter specifically about Ajaokuta, going back to the original builders, trying to, partner with them to ensure that it is up and running. So specifically for that, because that's a major challenge, manufacturers have, would you say that the government is moving in the right direction to at least get Ajaokuta back to what it should be, so we can have a good foundation in that area?
The Ajaokuta as we have it, let's not deceive ourselves. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It's like you buy a Volkswagen car, you park it for 50 years or 40 years, you wake up one day and then you say you are going to refurbish it and start running around. I don't know whether you've listened to almost every minister of, I don't know what they call them, iron and steel or whatever. Every minister comes, They run around to Ajaokuta, some of them cry, and then they come and they tell you, oh, we're going to resuscitate Ajaokuta. Have you ever seen anything happen since OBJ? Every single minister, you can count them on your fingertip. I've had calls actually to write memos to people in those places to say, look, why are we doing this? So why am I saying? Yes, we need a metallic industry. We need a strong petrochemical industry. And thank God for Alhaji Dangote's petrochemicals. That's probably one of the foundational structure that we missed. We were all excited that we're going to have, because when you have a metallic base for industry, you can make machine tools, you can make everything. So it becomes far easier for horizontal integration of the economy. If you need some tool, you can go to the next factory, you can do it, you can order. But when you don't have that foundation, everything has to be imported. And again, this is where it comes in about what is it, why are we not diversified? Why are we relying on oil? So when you are not able to make it domestically, you don't have an autonomous capability to make it yourself, you rely on others. And that's where the problem comes. So this vertical dependency on others to get your metal, to get your chemical, to get your fertilizer, this is what has undermined the growth of the Nigerian economy in a very fundamental way. So this is the point I'm making about the structures. The founding fathers meant well. If Ajaokuta, Delta, and all those had worked well, Nigeria would be at a very different level today. As I said to you, I was a participant. I was a witness to it. And what wrecked those programs was not the technical capability. After all, we started with POSCO. POSCO is Poyang Steel Company of Korea. We started with them almost the same year, 1970. We started 71, they started 1970. Almost the same year. You go and check, you can Google it. POSCO is probably one of the most dynamic steel companies in the world today. The World Bank told them at that time, don't do it, just stick with your radio, stick with your textile. They told Korea. It's all in history books for those who know how to read. They told them, they ignored them. They ignored them and they went ahead. POSCO, Korea today is the biggest shipbuilder in the world. They are one of the biggest steel producers. You know their cars, the Kia, the Samsung, and all of that. They came out of the metallic and chemical industry. This was where we wanted to be. This was where Nigeria was supposed to go. But politics trumped everything. This is the truth. But I believe that we can rebuild this economy. We can people always say a country is not going to die tomorrow or next year like human beings. Nothing is too late. And this COVID has shown us that we need to rebuild this economy, build back better and stronger.
Well,
so,
Professor,
for me, in a nutshell, I don't like to talk about Ajaokuta because it's like a hole in your heart. But this is the truth. Anyone who is telling you that is telling you a lie.
Well, there are so many things that you have said in the little time that we have had, but you have told us that we can rebuild this economy. How do we do that? We'll take that on when we return from this break. Just stay with us. Oh, thanks for staying with us. Professor Banji Oyelaron-Yinka is still with us in our Abuja studio. Well, Prof, if you don't mind, clearly, every successive government has, as you said, made efforts to jumpstart, again, the Ajaokuta project. And it is critical. You would agree. I mean, because if we are able to solve that part, a whole chunk of infrastructural development would be addressed, at least something possible at home, as opposed to having to import many of these things. So if you don't mind us just taking it from there in terms of the rebuilding process that you talked about, because just as you know, and everyone has told us, infrastructure, we have a huge deficit. How significantly do you think the Ajaokuta project can help to bridge the gap? And what do we need to do?
So, Ajaokuta, you mean, is synonymous with iron and steel. By the way, we had two integrated steel plants. Right? One was in Delta, which is the Alaja Steel Company, and then we had the Ajaokuta Steel Company. And I'm told that the one in Delta is actually been bought by a private company and is working. I haven't been there, but I think we need to check it out. I think government need to re-examine that. My worry about the Ajaokuta is the way, people have played with it. So you said successful governments had made effort. I'm not sure about effort. I'm not sure about whether people really understood what needed to be done, or whether I don't know what has happened. Why it never worked, but it never worked. So what I would say is, if there's someone who wants to really revitalize that plant, it should be done on a public sector basis, a private sector basis. This is, for me, one of the ways that we can solve this issue of rent, because people just see Ajaokuta as a place to extract rent. But without knowing the full details, but what I heard in the early days was that a lot of the equipment had been cannibalized. Many of them had been shipped away. Many had been lost through theft. If you want to go back to a technology that is almost 40 years old or more, you have a lot of work to do. So the site, the location itself could be the beginning of a resolution of that issue. But the business model has to be different. This is the point I would like to make. Let's find a different business model to do it. Let's re-examine the one in Alaja also, and see how government, enable it, but private sector drive it. That's the way I would like to see it. By the way, we also had like three, wire rod mills and so forth. One in Osogbo, Katsina, and another one in Delta. So, but I will say that I think what government should do is, explicitly back the development of this metallic industry, but not get involved in running it. Governments can't run business. Government doesn't have capability to run. It's not trained to do it. Bureaucrats are not trained to do it. So this is a lesson for us, a very painful lesson that we learned over the years, and we shouldn't make that mistake again. Nobody should come from some ministry and say, we want to resuscitate a plan, we are sending our people there. They can't do it. Let's put in place the structures in terms of policy framework for a private person to come and do it in a transparent way, not putting obstacles in people's way. So that's for me will be the best thing to do. And also for the same thing with the chemical industry. By the way, they are twin sides of the same coin, the metallics and the chemicals.
All right.
You have to also rebuild the chemical, which include pharmaceuticals. See how we are running around begging for vaccine. But Nigeria, I'm told by one professor of virology that we actually produced a human vaccine in 1991. Right now, Vaughan, despite all the neglect of all the scientific research agencies, they still produce animal vaccines. So the point is that we need to find a different framework.
Right.
We need to deploy our best people. We need to take politics out of business, out of the economics, as much as we can. Because it seems to me that third world economics is always bumped off by politics, by nepotism, by cronyism. This is what we've learned. It's not a theory. It's what we've learned over the years. So yes, I support your point. We should rebuild. Rebuilding starts from there. Rebuilding starts from putting in place a framework for people to come and do it. Nigerians are ready to do it. We've got many offers, for example, for the agro zones. Nigerians want to come. And we are hoping that we'll be able to ensure that people actually are allowed to do it. Mark my word, allowed to do it.
Well, and I believe that that allowing or allowance would largely come from the government. So let's focus more, as you said, government should not be in business, but government has a role in ensuring that the environment is conducive and ensure that those policies are not just mere statements, they're really followed through. And looking at the challenges that manufacturers have in the country. They talk about difficulty in accessing forex for importation of raw materials. I mean, they wouldn't have had to import if we had it in the country. So forex is a major challenge. Talk about high cost of power, and that's due to the recent, increase in electricity tariff. Of course, also the recent increase in price of petrol. And they also talk about high cost of transportation. I mean, we could talk about insecurity and how that affects transportation. There's low demand of manufactured goods in the country, which is also a major challenge for them. They talk about, minimum wage challenges. I mean, workers not being able to afford some of these things. Talk about VAT as well, from 5% to 7.5%. They talk about high cost of shipping due to erosion in Naira foreign exchange. And they talked about the steel and iron import and all that. So they have a lot of challenges around them. And if we want to be competitive in AFTA, which is already in place, we need the environment to be conducive. I mean, if you take a look at our exports, our goods exports, it dropped from 444 billion in 2019 to just 129 billion in the fourth quarter of 2020. And who knows what we'll see in this first quarter of 2021, because those challenges are still there. So if you were to pick a priority for government, if maybe government is saying this is too much for us to handle, what would you say is the first challenge government should tackle, at least to make the environment more conducive for manufacturers?
You cannot pick and choose. I think the key is to that allowance to examine our ways, if I may put it that way. We just need to examine our ways. All of these are under what the World Bank and call ease of doing business framework. We just need to have a new mindset, particularly those who have the power within the bureaucracy, within the agencies who are in charge of all of this, have the right mindset and see Nigeria in a very different light. One of my own pet theories is that because the pie is too small, everyone is hanging on to some very small pie this idea of sharing instead of building, and instead of adding to the size of the pie. So every person, everyone who has an opportunity somewhere, simply hang on to this is the pie to eat. Nigeria should not be seen in that way. We can build this country to a point where, we won't have the kind of level of poverty that we are. So what am I saying about the ease of doing business is a full framework. It's about governance and it's about institutions. Institutions, by the way, is different from organizations. Organizations are those agencies set up to run things on a daily basis. But institutions are these patterns and regularities of behavior. For example, you have someone who actually doesn't have a mindset to do what is right, running something that should be run right. I'm sure you know what I mean. So institutions is about people. It's about laws, our rules, both formal and informal. Sometimes informal behaviors are the ones that sabotage formal rules. You put a rule in place, for example, that don't harass anyone coming through the port. Don't spend more than 3 days to clear a certain set of goods. But then you have a particular officer who stands in the way and say, well, you are not going to move an inch if you don't do so and so and so. And that's contrary to the law. So the informal behavior trumps the formal rules. So this is that's what I'm saying. We need a change of mind. We need somebody to enforce the rules, to say, if you misbehave on this, you go to jail. Because we see that people get away with anything. Somebody does something wrong, and then they pick up a phone, call somebody, and they, leave him alone. And then recently, for example, someone was calling us and telling us about the export zone in Ogun State. That special export zone was set up with certain rules and regulations. And this person said, oh, now they said, so because the country doesn't have money, you have to now pay what you weren't paying. So basically tariff regulations. You can't just break a rule just because you have an issue. You have to have a sanctity of contract. You have to respect the rules. So you are talking about some of these. Apart from the hard infrastructure, in which we have a huge deficit, there's also the soft infrastructure. You ask some people, they say, look, Nigeria has opportunities. You started with that in your review. Huge opportunity. No, who wouldn't want to come to a country with 200 million market? But then they come, and then we put all kinds of barriers, and people just leave. We have one of the least foreign investment flow into any of our productive sectors. Yes, they'll go to oil, but they don't want to go anywhere because they say, oh, well, this place is too difficult. So we need a change of mindset. We need to change our ways, and we need to talk to ourselves. Look ourselves in the mirror and stop, trying to lie to ourselves. The soft part is actually the most insidious of people, of officers, of this. I don't want to mention any organization. Everything, somebody wants to extract a rent. This is what is causing our problem.
Just one thing on this same after that you talked about. With all the information that you have given us, even from the question that Kade asked, added to the issues that have been raised in several quarters, that there are fears that Nigeria may be a dumping ground as a result of AFTA because of in the process of the implementation. Do you see a risk of AFTA jeopardizing Nigeria's economy in the light of some of the things, the shortfalls that you have talked about?
Nigeria should be the biggest beneficiary because we have all it takes. And that's why the rebuilding has to start and accelerate. I believe very much in Nigeria. I believe very much in the power to do things. And of course, this is the message of Easter. After darkness, there will come light. Yes, Nigeria should not be a dumping ground. And the only way we can prevent that is for us to also be a manufacturing hub. And this is what we are trying to do, starting with the cluster approach. We are taking a cluster-based approach into agribusiness. And by the way, as I said, agriculture, we are not going to do it the ways our forefathers did agriculture. We want to do agribusiness. Agribusiness is huge. By 2030, the estimate for agribusiness in Africa is $1 trillion. It's huge. Globally, agribusiness is $8 trillion. It's bigger than IT. It's bigger than iron and steel. So we are in a good place because we have all the ingredients. We just need to make it work. So this is what we are pushing, and we want to do it properly. We have started with 4 zones. We started with 6 states, but we are going to reach every state. We are not ignoring any state. We are just doing it according to the books. Those whose documents are ready, we are already starting. So you might have seen stories this week, people saying 6 days. No, it's just the beginning. So as your document is ready, we just keep pushing into it. So I believe that we will rebuild, we can rebuild, and we should be determined to rebuild this. We have no other country. Okay.
Well, the only one sharing thing that you said among several others is that Nigeria should not be a dumping ground, and consequently we should do everything we can to prevent that. We have to thank you very much this morning, Professor Banji Oyelaran-Oyinka, for being our guest this morning and sharing your thoughts with us. He's Special Advisor to the President of the AFDB on Industrialization. Thank you so much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Kade. Thank you. Happy Easter.
Yeah, wish you same. So we're back in a moment to take on a very disturbing issue. Just stay with us.
In Ajaokuta, the Imo State capital, the ongoing industrial action by the Association of Resident Doctors has paralyzed activities at the Federal Medical Center in Idiaba area of the state. A visit to the hospital shows that the facility is deserted as key sections remain under lock and key. The effect of the industrial action coupled with the Easter holiday has forced patients seeking medical services to stay away. The president of the Association of Resident Doctors at the Federal Medical Center, Adebiyu Oluwabusuyi, explains that things will remain this way until the issues are resolved.
The situation in FMC Ajaokuta is not different. You see that there are no activities. We have medical officers below the levels of the principal medical officers, as well as residents, specialists below the cadre of the consultants are not at work. And that's the situation based on the directives of the national body.
Patients at the Federal Medical Center in Asaba, Delta State, are at the receiving end of the industrial action. Most wards at the hospital are empty, with no doctors on ground to attend to the few patients who came to seek medical help. This woman just lost her husband and she blames the strike, while some others have resorted to self-help following the absence of doctors at the hospital.
You cannot put a house officer who just suffered for 6-7 years, came out from the school, and then he's in the hospital. 24 hours he's working, round the clock, giving reports to his superiors, and then they come to review patients for 3-4 months. You don't deem it fit to pay them. I collect loans for house officers.
It's a mixed grill in Kaduna State as the strike by the resident doctors takes its toll on federal tertiary institutions in the state, while state chapters are yet to join. At the Barao Diko Teaching Hospital and the Sabon Tashe General Hospital in Chukun local government area, normal activities continue as the doctors there are carrying out their duties without disruption by union officials. But despite not joining the strike, the doctors say they have their own issues to contend with.
Here we are a state institution. We have our own peculiarities, and we believe that our own problems should be addressed by the state government, which we have firm belief that the state government will address our own grievances that are peculiar to us here.
Every other health institution, the facilities and the environment for work is not conducive. And just as our other colleagues are also fighting, the hazard allowance is nothing to write home about also. And then even the conditions for service is very poor.
It's not just the doctors that are bothered by the rot in the nation's health sector. Some residents of Kaduna, especially those whose relations are currently hospitalized, call on the federal government to address the grievances of the resident doctors as soon as possible, so they will continue to serve the people.
We don't know how on earth you allow a sector like this to go on strike. Because our political leaders, they don't treat themselves here. We have a lot of people here that they cannot go to private hospitals. The only little one that they can try to afford, and you allow them to go on strike.
It's day 3 and still no resolution to the impasse between the resident doctors and the federal government. The expectation is that the two parties will soon find a common ground so that normal activities can resume at the nation's hospitals.
For 5 days now, workers in one of the most critical sectors in the nation, I'm talking about the health sector, have been on strike. Now, put this in context, 16,000 doctors have withdrawn their services from a sector that we have always said does not have adequate manpower, adequate equipment, facilities, and the rest. So imagine 16,000 doctors withdrawing their services. I mean, this story will probably be better told by patients who have had to go to those hospitals and were probably turned back because there was no one to attend to them, or at least the staff on ground were not enough to attend to their health needs. Don't forget, this is a matter of life and death. So this is a major concern, 5 days. And this morning, we're trying to demystify the issues. Maybe a solution is on the horizon. And as you have seen, we're being joined this morning by Professor Innocent Uja, who is the president of the Nigerian Medical Association. He joins us virtually from Otukpo in Benue State. And we'll also be having Dr. Arome Christopher Adejo, who is the first vice president of the Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors. He will be joining us from our Abuja studio. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. But let me begin with Professor Uja, because, I mean, you are senior to these doctors. You have been in the field, the industry for years now. And it begs the question, first, what does the enemy think of this strike? Because for the resident doctors, they're fighting against the rot in the sector and they have their demands. But for the enemy, what is your view of this strike? Are you in support of it or you have your reservations?
I don't see the rationale for that question. In 1985, the Nigerian Medical Association said that hospitals became mere consulting clinics. That statement still holds today. It is very sad, and I'm indeed very sad, that a lot of people in government functionaries are misinforming the system and the government. In fact, I believe that some of them are even sabotaging the efforts of Mr. President. Otherwise, how can we be going round and round like this? These are things that have been on the drawing board for some time. Agreements were signed. Nothing happens once the industrial action is suspended. I mean, for the Minister of Labor to make that statement that he made, he's my very good friend, but I'm very disappointed at what he said, to the effect that the Nigerian doctors are being paid so much money, and America and the UK, you have to pay to do residency. That is complete lies. I would have said it's a misinformation and disinformation. And indeed, in fact, it's a hate speech. I don't expect a very respected Minister of Labor, a former governor, a former senator, to make such statements, because his statements will appear to be law when he makes a statement. A former governor, a former senator, and now minister. Now, how would anybody take what he says seriously? So by and large, my own feeling is that there are some people who want to sabotage the effort of Mr. President. And such people should either they are tired or they are unwilling. And the best way to respond to those issues is to probably quit, because they are not telling the truth. Doctors, patients, in fact, patients are suffering. It's not an issue of whether you are for or against the strike. The level of fraud that we have in the system is so bad. And we believe that we have people like Chris Ngige. What is the Federal Minister of Health doing? They are quiet, as if it doesn't bother them. I expect the Federal Minister of Health to respond appropriately to this. There was COVID. Doctors and other health workers went to the field to prosecute this war. Issue of hazard allowance came up. It was treated with levity, except for the intervention of the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives. Things wouldn't have come this way. And they paid this money that was pittance was paid for just 3 months. And that was all. Meanwhile, people are fighting to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. As I'm talking to you now, since June, nobody, no doctor, no health worker has received any COVID hazard allowance.
Okay, Prof.
And this is the period of war as far as health is concerned. So
Okay,
my
Prof.
statement, my feeling is that, yes, please, my statement is I think that the functionaries of government are very unserious.
Okay, Prof, I still don't think you answered my question regarding your view concerning NARD's action. You have spoken largely about the government's action, I mean, how the minister has responded. But, I mean, this approach taken by the NARD, is the NMA in support of it? Because I believe the NARD will be looking back to see who's in support of us since we're fighting for the health sector. But hopefully, when we return from this break, we'll get you to respond to that question and some other burning issues. So please, join us again. Professor Innocent Uja is still with us. He joins us virtually from Imo State. And just before that break, you were responding largely to what you have seen the government do, especially the Minister of Health. But now to the NARD, the resident doctors, their actions. I believe they look up to you for advice, for, guidance as to how to go about issues, which is why I asked, are you behind them on this strike action?
Respect. I mean, it's a rhetoric question. House officers have been working since January. Is there any reason why they should not be paid? These are people who work for 24 hours. The insurance, life insurance, in the period of pandemic, why should health workers, Nigerian doctors and health workers not be covered with life insurance? Why should there not be a COVID allowance, a health hazard allowance paid? The reality is that we've been trying, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I advised that the Federal Ministry of Health and Labor should better address these issues of the resident doctors. We've been going around, we've been trying to see how we can resolve this without anybody knowing. And we're going behind the scene, we've been discussing, we've been consulting, we've been negotiating. But the truth is that it doesn't appear that the functionaries of government are prepared to do anything. Otherwise, we shouldn't come to this mess. I believe that this should have been settled long time ago. So why is it that the functionaries of government, Minister of Labor and Employment, the Minister of Health, will keep quiet until there is a strike action? Why should doctors not be paid? House officers, these are people who are coming into the profession. After a series of strike, they couldn't graduate. They eventually graduated. They started there. They waited for months, if not years, to get a place for house job. Now they got a place of house job. They are doing their work, and unfortunately, they couldn't be paid. And it's just purely administrative lapses. It is not to say that there's no money for them.
Prof, you know government well. You were the former DG of NIMA, so you understand how these things work with government. And I mean, it begs the question, just like you are asking, a lot of Nigerians are asking, just how hard is it to solve these challenges? I mean, this is a very vital sector. This is a sector that concerns the lives of millions of Nigerians. So, I mean, having worked with government, do you still think there is an excuse, really, for governments to keep lagging behind when it comes to meeting these demands, which, honestly, there are a number of them?
You see, when you say government, it's very easy to say government. Governance is a delegated responsibility. So when we say government, let's say this time, Minister of Labor, and very clearly, and also Minister of Health, are we going to say that it's the fault of the president? I expect the president to call them to order, because they are drawing Nigerian health system into the mud, and it's not very nice. We should not be talking about, we're talking about the improvement in the health system. We're talking about reversing brain drain, where we should be talking about how we can improve medical services so that we can then have medical tourism in Nigeria. Not every day you're talking about qualities for doctors and other health workers, or house officers are not being paid, or equipment is not there. The situation is very bad. And it is you in China that probably think that health facility is a critical factor. I don't think that those who are charged with the responsibility think that is a critical factor. Otherwise, we shouldn't have come to this mess. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I'm pretty
the level
sure
of unseriousness demonstrated is very painful.
Well, I'm pretty sure, the fact is not lost on anyone in Nigeria, whether in government or not, how critical health infrastructure is. If health is critical, certainly the infrastructure will be as well. But then, pay is just one of the issues being raised by the NRD. We'll soon go to Dr. Arume in our Abuja studio, but other issues have been raised by them, Prof. They have talked about implementation of the September 2017 memorandum of terms of settlements between NARD and the federal government in order to bring lasting peace to the health sector and curb the ugly trend of brain drain from the health sector in Nigeria, as well as the immediate review of the act regulating postgraduate medical training in Nigeria. Take a look at that last one, Prof, the one that talks about regulating postgraduate medical training in Nigeria. A good number of people are wondering what exactly is being talked about there, and not once or twice has the name of the MDCN, the regulatory body of the health sector, been mentioned in all of this melee. What do you make of it, and how did we get here? How do we ensure we never go back there? Professor Uja, that's for you.
Yeah, how did we get here? We know why we got here. We got here because we are unserious. Things are not taken very seriously. The issue of the review of the act is not something that it should be done immediately, but it can be put on board and we see the process. That is a process. Is it difficult to pay house officers who have been working for 3-4 months? Is it possible? Is it difficult to pay health workers, including doctors, COVID hazard allowance? Is it difficult to pay those who have been working, resident doctors who have been working and have not been paid? Tell me what is difficult in this. Unfortunately, I feel very sad.
Yeah, we've talked about that one, but I'm talking about the several times that the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria has been mentioned in all of the conversations. How significant is it, in the first place that, this issue with the MDCN is coming as far as the NARD is concerned? What should be done? How did we get to the point where the MDCN is being mentioned by the NARD about this matter? How do we ensure that we don't get back there again?
Well, I don't know. I think the issue of MDCN is a recent event. It's not something that has been on. Probably it will reorganize the place. That has been on. But the issue of the MDCN is the issue of placement for house officers, whereby some are being paid, some are not being paid. I think that is where that is the centralization of the placement of house officers. That is being done. I have met personally with the committees of CMDs. I've discussed with the Medical and Dental Council, and they say they were going to work on this to perfect it. It's a new beginning. This is the first time that house officers are being centrally placed. And we thought that was a good thing because we know that severally, many house officers many doctors had finished their training and they don't have a placement. You know somebody and then they will give you, or if you don't know anybody, you have no place. And if you do not do your house job, you cannot be registered as a full-time doctor. Otherwise you remain temporary license. So you must get your full license after the house job. But what we say is that this is being attended to, and very soon we believe that this will be resolved. But the lingering issues that have been on for some time, Why do we have to wait until resident doctors say they are going on strike?
Interesting, Prof.
We in the NMA, we decided that we should go behind the scene to thinking that, and in our belief, that negotiation, dialogue, advocacy would work.
Okay,
in
I
many
think one
areas,
issue...
not just
Right.
Yes.
I think one issue that has been a bone of contention is whether or not NARD should suspend the strike while negotiation is ongoing or continue with the strike. I mean, the Minister of Health referenced the meeting they had just a day before the strike started and saying that, well, an MOA was put out, it was signed, by representatives of the resident doctors, and, it was meant to be taken back. So he was of the opinion that pending the time they reconvene and solve those issues, the strike should be suspended, and at least patients should begin to be attended to. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, anything that will be done to suspend the strike, actually, NMA will favor it. But the issue is that the government should be prepared, to ensure that they do the right thing. I think that is the issue, that and the Dr. NMA doesn't have any quarrel with it. Like I said, for the past 21 years, NMA has not gone on strike. But the issue is that the NARD is an affiliate of the Nigerian Medical Association, and we should be interested in what happens to them, which is peculiar to them. And even then, some of these are not even peculiar to them. Some of them extend to all doctors in this country. So what we need to do is government to demonstrate sincerity or purpose and be serious so that these things can be sorted out once and for all. And then we forget about issue of hazard allowance, or because doctors are leaving this country. Many more will leave unless the environment, the work environment is made conducive. Otherwise, they will go to where they are needed. Unfortunately, that is what will happen, because it will appear that those who are here are thought to probably have no option. But it's a sense of patriotism, the demonstrating sense of patriotism, and they should be reciprocated so that the right thing should be done, work environment should be made, patients will get the best of treatment that we can offer. And in that case, there should be no reason for anybody to emigrate. But the issue of brain drain is a very serious problem. And this will reflect in the next 5 years. Because in the next 5 years or so, many of us who are on the field would have exited the field. And those who should provide service are not there to provide the service.
Well, Professor,
so we should not take things lightly at all.
I think one of the major points is the fact that you say the NMA is working behind the scenes to ensure that this strike ends, and would like to see, of course, the fruits of those works. But we'd like to thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. Professor Innocent Uja is the president of the NMA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So let's join Dr. Arome Christopher Adejo, who is the first vice president of the NARD. I mean, these are the doctors concerned. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Well, Dr. Adejo, thank you for staying with us. Now, you've listened to the president of the NMA. Are you hopeful, really, that at least the input of the NMA and some others might bring this to a fruitful resolution?
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning to my able NMA president, Professor Uja, and I wish to appreciate the effort of Nigerian Medical Association behind the scene. On behalf of my president, I want to say a very big thank you to them. Well, we know they have been behind the scene doing one or two things, but we have always said it that there are some basic requirement. And before I go further, if you will allow me, I just want to clarify one or two things. It seems that in Nigeria, we have a wrong interpretation of the physicianhood. And I want to let Nigerians know that we are very sorry for presently embarking on this strike. And what we are doing, actually, we are trying to adhere to our oath, because we are trying to make sure that we take care of ourselves to give the highest standard of care to our patients. You see, that oath consists of 4 parts. 1, responsibility to your patient. 2, responsibility to the society. 3, responsibility to your colleagues, nurses that work with you, and your fellow doctors. And 4, responsibility to yourself. If you are not responsible to yourself, you cannot be responsible to the society, to your patient, and to your colleagues. And irresponsible, and someone that is not responsible cannot play his part. I just want to let the Nigerian government know that with what has been happening of late, with the tantrums being thrown at our part, making it seem as if we are strike mongers, I want to let them know that for months, I have been going to Ministry of Health almost every week, up to an extent that the last time I went there, I was kept for more than 3 hours waiting to see a certain director. And when I walked into her office, she discharged me within 2 minutes. She discharged the whole of NAD within 2 minutes. So we have done a lot of behind-the-scene work also as NAD. We have begged. The only thing we have not done is to kneel down and cry and beg them to please look into our grievances. So at the point we are now, it is last resort. They either look into the health sector very well, solve the issues once and for all, or we remain at home and we don't care whatever threat they will issue. After all, some of us do not train in this country. If you want us to go back, we will go back. We will go back. That is the truth.
Well, I believe a lot of Nigerians, majority of Nigerians, definitely would love the doctors to resume. I mean, the first day was enough hell. Now, this is 5 days counting. But, you know, one of the issues that the minister had raised prior to this time was, he said that, you know, during that meeting you had before the strike commenced, that there was an MOA, which, I mean, members of the association who represented the president appended their signature to. And, you know, the plan was at least you take the issues back to your executives and plan to meet in 4 weeks. So are you saying that the association is ready to stay on this strike until those issues are resolved, or you're willing to at least return to work while the issues are negotiated? Because for the minister, he says that agreement was duly signed.
With all due respect to the minister, because he's somebody I see and I love every day, it is bad for you to come on air and call on the NAT president health. The NAT president is just one person in NAT. It's not the whole of NAT, and he has us there. I was there throughout, and if I was there and I was in constant communication with him. You don't expect somebody who is sick to sit down and negotiate with you so that he will fall down and die. Do you know how many lives God has destined for the NAT president to save after now? If he dies that day, how can he save those lives? So it's bad for someone to come on air and say that somebody was sick and walked away. No. And number two, we made it very clear. You see, what we signed that day was a summary of our discussion. And if those that were around remembered, in my opening, I made it clear that number one priority, all our members must be paid. Because we didn't want to go on strike. We begged. We tried. Because we want to have a strike-free year. And of course, as the NMA president said, some people are sabotaging the government. They want us to go on strike. They gain from the strike. And I was saying that after each strike, there should be a proper investigation. Let them look into the cause of this strike. Let them know those people who were responsible and didn't do their job. As a doctor, if I don't do my job, somebody will die. And the next thing, I will be penalized. But somebody
confirmation
out there
or something
does not want to do his job so that I can do my job well.
Yeah. Let me confirm.
Nobody cares about it. Nobody wants to talk to the person.
Well, Doc, if you don't mind, just a second, just 1 second. There's something you said now that caught my attention, and I think, you know, it might be good to clarify for everyone. When you say some people are benefiting when doctors go on strike, exactly what do you mean?
Yes. If I can go to Ministry of Health with the president almost every day, for the past 3 months, if I was kept waiting for 3 hours to be discharged within 2 minutes, if somebody who has been paid every month of the past 3 months will sit down, look into our eyes and tell us to give them 3 weeks for them to pay house officers that have wives, that have parents, that buy drugs for their family, that take care of their parents to wait for another 3 months in this celebration period. And you are telling us that it's wrong for us to go on strike in celebration. I am saying that it's wrong for us to go on strike during this time, but it's not wrong for we to fall down and die. It's not wrong for our family members, for our kids not to go to school during this time. So these people should be looked into, because I believe they are the causes of the strike. Because whatever we are shouting for, it has been there for time immemorial. And we have been begging them, we have been talking to them, we have been appealing to them, we've told them we don't want to go on strike. We
Just
don't
one
want
moment,
Nigeria
Doc.
to look at us in a different perspective.
Yeah. In
we
what
have been
way?
trying to stop brain drain. If you look at what we have been doing so far, since September, we have been diving into areas that will prevent our members from going abroad.
Well, Doc, just one moment.
I don't want others to go back.
Just one moment, just so we are clear and people can understand. In what way do people benefit when you go on strike?
Well, I think you should ask all those who were in the meeting with us that day. They will answer you well. But as far as I'm concerned, I saw sabotage everywhere. Because if you are not doing your own job, you don't pay house officers for 3 months. You don't pay registrars for 3 months. You casualize registrars. You come and tell us that they are paying them for their training, and you go abroad and you pay. There is something wrong somewhere. People should sit down and look into these things. These things should be investigated. That is the truth. I won't come here and call names, but I believe that everybody that was there that day, the budget office, the Ministry of Health, everybody, they should be looked into. In fact, somebody came and was saying that that the government have tried a lot for us. What have they tried? What have they done? When somebody you have not paid for the past 3 months is paying over 500,000 naira, he took a loan of over 500,000 naira to write exam next week, and you don't even want to pay him. How would that guy go and pass his exam? How? And if he does not pass the exam, he will not specialize. So these things should be looked into clearly. There is sabotage. That is the truth. And I'm very happy that the NMA president come on here and said it. There is sabotage. The government should look into it. You can't blame the Minister of Health. You can't blame the Minister of Employment and Labor. You cannot blame the presidency. When this MOU is signed, it's pushed towards a certain human means dex. The person should do his work. How can Medical and Dental Council sit down and not pay house officers for 3 months, and they've known all along that they're in charge of this payment?
Oh, so Doctor,
you need to verify and send names.
So you're saying, in essence,
and you come out boldly.
Yeah. So you're saying, in essence, that this is not the fault of the Minister of Health or the Minister of Labor and Employment, because prior to this time, I mean, the thinking was, you thought, I mean, they were probably the ones not being forthcoming on this issue. But from what you said now, it seems you don't think it's their fault. Am I right?
I will not put the blame solely on the Minister of Health's decks and on the Minister of Labor's decks. I will not put the blame. There are some people who are, okay, now, look at it. The Medical and Dental Council, the registrar, is somebody that is at fault, partly at fault, for this strike. Because we've been begging them. The president called in and he spoke rudely to the president. People have not been paid for 3 months. You open your mouth and speak rudely to the president of NAD, and you're a doctor, you sit in your office, air-conditioned office, while people that are working go outside in words that are congested, sweating every day. You understand? Transport to work, feed themselves, and you don't want to pay them.
Well, I mean,
so
putting that in... Absolutely. People should be held accountable. I mean, there's no excuse to keep having these embarrassing industrial actions in such a critical sector. But can you confirm that a meeting has been scheduled, is it for today or the coming days? What can you tell us about the coming meeting and what your expectations are?
As at this very moment, no meeting has been scheduled. We have not received any formal invitation. And I just want to let them know that you don't need to invite us if you have not done the needful. Because right now, we try to be cordial. We try to be respectful. We try to sit down with you and talk with you. And you come out on air and try to blackmail us. So our Congress have told us the basic requirement. If you don't do it, we might not even come and sit with you. It doesn't make sense. What are we negotiating? What are we negotiating? When you have not yet paid people for up to 4 months? When some people have exam next month and you have not yet paid them? What are we negotiating? It's just a waste of time. We don't have that time to waste. That is the truth.
So you're saying that there's no meeting scheduled for tomorrow that your president is meant to attend with the Minister of Labour?
For tomorrow. I'm saying it with full authority, with the authority of my president, that there is no meeting scheduled for tomorrow. If there's a meeting, I should have known by now.
All right. Well, clearly these issues need to be resolved as fast as possible. But we wish you the very best, and we look forward to an amicable resolution. But I would like to thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today on the program. We were speaking with Dr. Arome Adeja, who is the first vice president of the Association of Resident Doctors. He joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for your time.
Thank you once again, and I wish to apologize once again to the Nigerians and plead with them to please bear with us, because we want to put the health sector right once and for all.
Right.
No time again for another issues. Thank you.
All right.
Well, definitely the next item on the agenda, so to speak, is your own comments. And one of the first that I see on our Twitter thread is by Dr. Kwamata. The very first of his thread, usually has a thread, that talks about the need for fundamental reforms in the health sector. Healthcare professionals work and don't receive pay. The working conditions and the state of facilities are deplorable. And he says we can't continue like this. I'm pretty sure everyone will agree with him that we can't continue like this.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if this is rocket science, really. And it calls to question the managers of the health sector. If this is what we can come up with after years, decades of, doing this. If they say Western health or foreign medical care did not jump on us yesterday. It's been on for decades. So if this is best we can get for ourselves, then I think we should begin to rethink the management of the health sector. Maybe have some other people come on board to manage our health sector if it's so hard for those currently in charge. So, Dr. Pamusa, I think you are right on that one.
Well, the second one is from Doctor, a second doctor. Dr. Kasmir Ifeanyi says international best practices in the UK and US and the rest of them, you pay to enter the residency program. Nigerian students, resident doctors are paid salaries, paid to write exams, etc., says the minister. Overhaul and restructure Nigeria's health services system now.
There's an exclamation mark after that, by the way. Take a look at...
That's to underscore the urgency.
Oh, yes. Henry's tweet is next, says, the way and manner this strike is being handled is a foretaste of Nigeria's anticipated response in building, or rather rebuilding, the health system and achieve universal health coverage. Keep politics aside. Now is the time for Nigeria to wake up. We are very far from the target.
And if we look at the next one from Ismail, says the issue with the Nigerian health sector stemmed from the fact that political office holders can seek medical attention abroad. Imagine doctors are on strike and the president is on medical tourism in the UK.
Oh dear, we have more tweets from Professor Inakin at the Compendium, Comrade Francis. We thank you so much, and others, for sending in your tweets and mails. We really appreciate you for also joining us. And that's the show. I am Kayode Kikilu. Do have a beautiful Easter Monday celebration, right?
Oh, certainly. I don't know if the people in Imo State are having that kind of thing right now with the breaking news that we brought you earlier. But more will come in the course of time. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.